Hi everyone, my name is Beth Nagger, and I started the Go Kids program because I was approached by Tracy. She knew that I was wanting to do something to give back to the church, and I cannot believe what a wonderful experience it has been. I absolutely love working there, and I've done excuse my dog, I've done the baby and toddler room, and I've done that for about a year and a half, and it is just the most fabulous thing, and I look forward to it every time I'm on the schedule. So much that I've even told Tracy to add me when she needs extra help. Usually I will sing songs to the children and just love on them, and sometimes we will do building blocks and just other activities that let them know that Jesus is with them, or they'll make nice things for their parents. It is absolutely wonderful, and I think anyone who is wanting to give back to the church in some way should really look into this and contact Tracy.
Well, good morning, guys. That was an enthusiastic good morning. I love it. So you just heard from Beth. I've had the privilege of serving with Beth in Go Kids for the last year and a half or so, and I also have her daughter in my Go Kids class. So they've been such a great addition to our team. We love having them. And it's a really fun team to be on. So Beth encouraged you, if you've ever considered Go Kids, to have a conversation with Tracy. I just want to reiterate that. You've seen this family ministry board at the back for the last few weeks. It shows everybody who's currently serving in our various family ministry teams and the spots we're still trying to fill on those teams. And I want to encourage you, first of all, I think it's really easy for us to sometimes feel like I'm not a kids person. Like when I hear Beth talk about babies and toddlers terrify me. They're tiny and I'm clumsy and I worry. So I don't serve in that room. That's not my group. But I serve with the older kids, and I deeply enjoy the relationships I've gotten to make with them, the way that I get to see the way that they view the world, and the way that I see the way that their picture of God is developing is such a gift to me. So maybe you are like, I could maybe do that, but I just don't know what age would be right for me. The way to do that right now is go back. There's these little cards in the corner of the board, and you just put your name and contact info, and it says what class you're interested in maybe serving in. If you don't know, just put a question mark. Tracy's great at this. She's a pro. She'll walk you through this and maybe have you shadow some rooms, and you can see what would be a good fit for you. But if you have ever at all been interested in Go Kids, we'd love to have that conversation. So make sure you do that after the gathering, okay? Also, if you are new around here, whether in the room or joining us online today, we're so grateful that you're with us and you're spending some of your beautiful spring Sunday with us today. It is gorgeous out there. If you're a guest, I want you to know we have a gift for you this morning. Rachel Jew will be back at the table right at the back by the tech booth, and she's got the Meadow Heights campfire mugs. I think they're loaded up with some hot chocolate mix or something, and she would love to just meet you and give you one of those if you haven't had a chance to get one yet. The other thing you need to be aware of if you are a guest around here is the Meadow Heights app. So if at any point you're interested in learning what events we have coming up or signing up for a group, if you have a prayer request or you want to catch up on old messages, our app is a great way to do that. There's QR code. Look at that. Already ready. You can grab your phone, scan the QR code, start downloading that if you haven't yet. For those of you who have been here a long time, I say it every time I'm up here, but if you don't have the app yet, what on earth? Just download the app. It'll be so helpful to have that when it comes time to, we have events or groups starting up. So grab your phone if you don't have that downloaded yet, and go ahead and get it. One of the things that many of us use the app for these days is most of us give online when we give back to God through partnering with our local church. There are many of us who serve and Go Kids. Some of us, that is not our way to serve, and that's okay. A lot of you support what happens in Go Kids by giving financially on a regular basis. And if you came prepared to worship in that way, now would be a great time to do that. You can grab your phone and go ahead and do that now, or if you're more analog, we have envelopes and buckets by the doors, and you can drop those off after the gathering. I already mentioned it, but this weekend has just been beautiful, hasn't it? And I hope you guys have been outside and enjoying it the way my family has. And before we kind of hand things back over, to the music team and sing some more, I thought it would be good for us to just take a moment and thank God for all of the beauty of spring and the new life that comes with that and the hope that that brings. So would you guys stand with me as we pray? Father, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for the way that we get to see the cycle of renewal and regrowth and newness and hope manifested this time of year as things are blooming and the sun's shining again. We're grateful for this world that you've given us to enjoy and care for. We're grateful for the opportunity to do so with a group of other like-minded people who are attempting to live and love like Jesus in our everyday lives. And I pray that the time we spend together today would encourage us as we go out and live and love that way this week. In your name, amen. Okay, guys, I'm going to hand it back over to the music team, and they're going to take it from here.
we're going to take it back to the first song. Hope you guys learned it. It's really easy, and please join us as we do it again. Oh
Thank you guys so much. That was a new one for me, but I loved it. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to make a sharp turn from that beautiful song and make a statement that I've noticed over my years of following Jesus. And it's this, that Christians say some really super weird stuff sometimes, right? We do. And I think the challenge is that we often don't recognize how weird the things we say actually can be, especially if we grew up in church and we're like used to the lingo. But when we take a step back and look at it from a different perspective, or maybe we're with somebody from a different background and we begin to see our Christianese lingo through their eyes, it's hard to deny that some of what we say sounds just odd sometimes. And here's an experience that I had that really stuck with me where I maybe first realized fully this. And it is no shade whatsoever to our amazing and talented music teams. I have to say that in the beginning. So much talent, and they are experts at picking the best songs for each week. I love everything that they do. But I will admit that there is, like when I know I'm having, we're going to have a week where there's a lot of new people, or maybe I have somebody that I know is going to be there for the first time and they have like almost zero faith background. There is one song that I always secretly hope we are not singing. And I'm going to admit it. It is This Is Amazing Grace by Phil Wickham. Please don't come for me with your pitchforks. Like, I love this song personally. I sing this song a lot. It's a great song. But it's a great song for those of us who already know the lingo. 'Cause I remember I had this one Sunday where I was in Go Kids a little longer, helping kind of square some things away, and so I come into the service quite a bit late, and I walked into the middle of the song, and it's at the point where we're at the like big dramatic bridge of the song, and I look around, and there's all these people, eyes closed, emotionally singing over and over again, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain," which, yes, is straight from Scripture, and it's an amazing redemptive concept. I love this song. There were echoes of that same idea in that song we just learned, right? But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had in that moment that, like, if I had been walking in totally new to the Jesus story and I walked in at that exact moment, I would have been wondering, like, what kind of weird cult ceremony did I just walk into? What is going on here? And this kind of thing has been happening with the things that Jesus say, or the things that Jesus people say, since the time that Jesus was here and he was walking the earth, and often saying some things that sounded pretty weird to the people who were listening to him. Especially when he's like foreshadowing things that he knows are coming, but we don't fully understand what he's saying and talking about yet. There's this story in John 6 where Jesus is talking about how he is the bread of life, and he tells the people that are listening to him that if they really want to live the full, rich life that they have always wanted, they have to eat his flesh and drink his blood. And literally a bunch of the people standing there that have been following him for all this time are like, "This message is harsh." That's the direct quote. "This message is harsh." And they nope out. They stop following him, like right then. But now when we read that story, as weird as those words sound on their face, we don't get freaked out by it because we have the benefit of hindsight. We know what comes next. We know what he's talking about. We know that shortly after this plays out, the faithful few who stuck around experience what we now know is the Last Supper, where Jesus kind of doubles down on this metaphor of eating his flesh and drinking his blood, and he begins to explain a little bit more of what he means by that. That moment, the Last Supper, it's the origin of the practice of communion that Christians have been observing ever since then. And it's also our next stop in this big Bible short story series. This whole series, we've been doing kind of a flyover view of the whole Bible, and we're looking for echoes of two of the most important themes that we see throughout the biblical narrative, themes about God's covenant and about his kingdom. And Jesus, as he introduces this practice of communion at the Last Supper, what he's doing is he's giving us the repeatable, embodied metaphor to show us all something about the goodness of his covenant commitment and his kingdom love that's going to make a lot more sense to the disciples and to us later after we've experienced all that's coming, right? And the good news that we're going to see as we look at the origin of the communion practice is this, that Jesus' sacrificial love on the cross reveals God's hidden wisdom, that love has the power to defeat evil and death. We practice communion to remember the freedom that God's love secured for us and to renew our commitment to living in the kingdom way of love. So we're going to drop in on Jesus and his disciples in that first communion scene. The classic version of this that we typically read is in Luke 22, and it says, "When the time came, Jesus took his place at the table, and the apostles joined him. He said to them, 'I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I won't eat it until it is fulfilled in God's kingdom.' And after taking a cup and giving thanks, he said, 'Take this and share it among yourselves. I tell you that from now on, I won't drink from the fruit of the vine until God's kingdom has come.' After taking the bread and giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way, he took the cup after the meal and said, 'This cup is the new covenant by my blood, which is poured out for you.'" Now, typically when we read this passage, we do so right before we practice communion in a church service. And we read the passage, we pause to remember what Christ has done for us, and then we take the bread and the wine or juice. And this is what Jesus instructed us to do. He actually says, "Do this in remembrance of me." We are practicing this because Jesus established this as an ongoing practice. But there's a lot more that's going on here than just that, especially for those first disciples. And when we understand the additional layers of meaning that this practice held for them, it becomes an even richer, more meaningful experience for us today. So first of all, it's super important to note that Jesus didn't just convene a family-like meal out of nowhere here. This meal takes place in the context of Jesus and his disciples celebrating the Passover together, because they are good Jewish kids that grew up doing this. And if you're unfamiliar, Passover is a pretty important Jewish tradition. It's an annual celebration meal that they observed, that they still observe, to commemorate the way that God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. And the original Passover event happened all the way back in the book of Exodus, where God repeatedly sends Moses, kind of a big deal in the Old Testament, to the Egyptian Pharaoh to ask him to follow God's lead and let his people go free from slavery. And over again, Pharaoh promises that he'll consider it, or he says he's going to let him go, and then he changes his mind, which leads to a series of 10 increasingly more severe plagues throughout the land of Egypt. And in the last of these plagues, the firstborn male child of every household, including Pharaoh's own son, all die in the same night. But the sons of the Israelites are spared because they followed God's instructions, and they marked their doors with the blood of a pure lamb. So when the angel of death goes through, it passes over the homes that are marked with this sign, and that's how we got the name Passover, right? So after this experience, Pharaoh, at last, he lets the Israelites go free, though if you know the story, after they've already left, he changes his mind again. He decides he's going to go after them, and that ends up being a very bad strategic move on his part. But ever since then, the Jewish people have celebrated Passover. This is something that they do ever since that moment, because it was a big milestone moment in their faith. It was that point at which what they call the Exodus, capital E, began. And they were finally freed from slavery, led on this journey through the desert to the promised land. And so they look back on this time as an example of how God's always been faithful to his covenant, that he's always been with them, he's always provided for them. So that's the origin of Passover. But then we fast forward from then to the night of the Last Supper, and in verses 15 and 16, Jesus says, "I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I won't eat it until it is fulfilled in God's kingdom." There's a lot going on in those two sentences. First of all, Jesus is expressing his eagerness to celebrate the specific Passover meal with his disciples before he goes through suffering. Because Jesus knows what they don't yet, that this is the last meal he's going to share with them, with his closest friends and followers. And so he chooses to tie this experience explicitly to the original Passover story as a way of explaining the significance of all the crazy stuff that they're about to experience together before they even experience it. This, like Passover has been for Jews forever, this is going to be a moment for them to look back on, to understand, and to remember. And notice that he also said that he would not eat the Passover meal again until it is fulfilled in God's kingdom. Because Jesus knows what the disciples don't know yet. But later that very same night, Judas is going to betray him, he's going to be arrested, and he's going to kick off his painful journey toward the cross, which is the suffering he was just talking about. But in doing so, he's also about to begin a new exodus, where he frees his people from slavery again, but this time he's going to free them not just from temporal slavery, but he's going to free them from the bondage of sin and death and separation from God forever and ever. Jesus establishes communion in this moment as a sign of the new covenant that he himself is about to fulfill. All along, God has always been faithful to his side of that covenant promise, to live in loving relationship with us. But over and over again, his people, they run away to other gods and idols, or they decide they don't need him, they're just going to go it their own way, and over again, they experience the pain of that separation. Jesus is about to end that painful cycle once and for all, and usher in a new kingdom where God's love reigns and they can never be enslaved again. Jesus' sacrificial love on the cross reveals God's hidden wisdom that love has the power to defeat evil and death forever. And so we practice communion now to remember the freedom that God's love secured for us and to renew our commitment to living in that kingdom way of love. At the Last Supper, Jesus establishes communion as the sign of the new covenant, but then he takes it a step further because he actually offers himself as the new Passover lamb. Let's look again at verses 19 through 20. He says, after taking the bread and giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way, he took the cup after the meal and said, "This cup is the new covenant by my blood, which is poured out for you." Jesus is showing them before they even experience it that the suffering they're about to watch him endure, it's, yes, going to lead to the fulfillment of the covenant once and for all. But also, he was giving himself to that willingly, out of love for all of us. He's saying this bread that I'm breaking, my body is going to be broken like this bread. And my blood is going to be poured out like this wine. And I'm doing all of it for you because I love you. Notice that this meal wasn't served to them by someone else. Jesus himself serves the meal. It's he who breaks the bread and hands it to them. He pours the wine and passes it to them. The communion meal becomes this embodied representation of the way that God loves us. Jesus offers all of himself to us. He always has. He holds nothing back, even to the point of death. And our job is simply to continually receive that love and allow it to sustain us the way food and drink does. That's what this metaphor and this practice helps us remember. That Jesus' sacrificial love on the cross reveals a hidden wisdom from God, that love has the power to defeat evil and death forever. And we practice communion now to remember that freedom that God's love secured and to renew our own commitment to live that kingdom way of love in all of our lives. So one of the questions that often comes up when we talk about this idea of like Jesus being the new Passover lamb is, how does all that work? What exactly is happening in this cross experience? And that is something that Christians have debated forever, and that debate will probably not end until we are all in heaven and God can fully explain it to us. To a certain extent, I think we have to accept that there is some mystery that's always going to be surrounding that. We can't reduce what Christ did to some mathematical formula. But we have a lot of really great descriptions of what Jesus did on the cross. And one of the best is found in Colossians 2, verses 13 through 15. It is, in any translation, a really great verse to keep in your back pocket. But we're going to read it today in the Message paraphrase because I think it puts it in such a stark and beautiful way. It says, "When you were stuck in your old sin-dead life, you were incapable of responding to God. But God brought you alive right along with Christ. Think of it, all sins forgiven, the slate wiped clean, that old arrest warrant canceled and nailed to the cross. He stripped all the spiritual tyrants in the universe of their sham authority at the cross, and he marched them naked through the streets." Guys, this is God's hidden wisdom, that Jesus' self-sacrificial love stripped sin and death of its power against us. And it turned that destructive force that had been turned on us inward toward itself. In the Exodus account of the Passover, we're told that when the Lord sees the blood of the lamb on the doorposts, he will not allow the destroyer to go into that house. Because if the destroyer goes in, he's going to do what the destroyer always does. He steals and kills and destroys. But at the cross, Jesus became our Passover lamb. And he absorbed all that the destroyer was poised to throw against us, and all of that was crucified there at the cross. So when God's love brought Jesus back to life, it resurrected us as well. And as Colossians put it, this exposed all the spiritual tyrants as sham authorities. It diffused and disarmed their power forever. There's a martial arts technique called Aikido. And the idea behind Aikido is that the practitioner basically has this philosophy of never taking an aggressive stance or posture themselves. Instead, they learn to employ tactics and maneuvers where they're able to turn the aggressive acts of their opponents back onto him or herself. In essence, the wisdom and the skill of the Aikido practitioner causes their opponent to basically self-destruct, and all of the aggression that they bring ends up landing on themselves. So this is a lot like what happens when God's love causes sin and death to turn its own destructive force inward upon itself. Jesus sacrifices himself out of love for us on the cross, and that love has the power to defeat sin and death forever. It exposes it as the sham that it is, that his love is always going to be stronger and more powerful. And so we practice communion to remember the freedom that God's love secured for us and to renew our own commitment to live that kingdom way of love. But we don't always want to just put good news out there or explain things like the context of Passover and Last Supper. We always want to talk about what do we do with this? How do we respond to good news? And I think the first, most obvious one is we can respond to this good news by practicing communion. It's a way for us to remember what Jesus' love has done for us and to reaffirm our commitment to live in love like he does. Probably no big surprise here, but we're going to end our gathering and our time together today by practicing communion together. So if you're joining us online and you're somewhere where you're able to, this would be a great time to grab maybe some bread or a cracker or something to drink so that you can practice along with us. But I think sometimes it's helpful to think of practicing communion kind of like a vow renewal ceremony. Sometimes this is something that couples who've been married a while choose to do, where they have another ceremony to renew their vows. And oftentimes that happens after a long season of some challenge. Maybe they went through some stuff together, or their relationship was challenged, or the things that they had to face together helped them understand the depth of their commitment in new ways. And communion can kind of be like that for us too, right? Like we initially made a decision that we're going to follow Jesus. We're going to live and love like he does. And then we live some life with Jesus. And the more life we live with him, the more we see the evidence of his goodness that we sang about, the more that those commitments we made have depth for us. We understand his goodness at a new level. And so communion is a chance for us to bring all of that experience and pause and reflect and realign our heart around the commitment that we've already made to live a life of following Jesus. But guys, that practice of taking that time to remember, it's only helpful if it sets us on a course where we actually live out that commitment with all of our life. The next step, and the other way to respond to the good news today, is to actually go out and live our lives as an embodied representation of the transformative love that Jesus revealed on the cross. The cross was the pinnacle, and it will always be the most powerful picture of the kind of love that can disarm evil wherever it goes. But Jesus has been inviting us to live in this kingdom way of life all along. In his most famous teaching, the Sermon on the Mount, we did an 18-month macro series working all the way through this. So you can go back and check that out online if you need a refresher. But in the Sermon on the Mount, we see Jesus over and over again call us to this kind of radical love. And he invites his followers to do seemingly crazy and definitely counterintuitive things. Well, things like loving our enemies and praying for the people who persecute us. He says, if somebody hits you in the face, turn the other cheek. He looks at a group of poor and oppressed Jewish peasants who are living under Roman occupation and says, if a Roman officer comes to you and compels you to carry his stuff for 1 mile, carry it 2. This is the kind of stuff that Jesus invited us to do over and over again. And Paul, who wrote much of the rest of the New Testament, he reaffirmed this way of living. In his letter to the Romans, he says, don't try to get revenge for yourselves, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, revenge belongs to me. I will pay it back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. By doing this, you will pile burning coals of fire upon his head. It's that Aikido thing. Don't be defeated by evil, but defeat evil with good. When we practice that kind of self-sacrificial love, especially in the moments where all our instincts are telling us to fight fire with fire, we're unleashing the transformative power of love into the situation. And we're practicing ceding control of what's going to happen to God and not trying to control it or force it ourselves. He knows things we can't know. He is at work in ways we don't see yet. Only He can really bring about the kind of lasting change in a situation that we hope for. So we don't need to seek retributive justice on our own. Our job is to love our enemy and then trust God with the outcome. It sounds simple. It's really hard to live out. In the last few years, I have had, let's call them some extra opportunities, maybe, to practice this. And I will admit that I am definitely still in remedial learning on this particular lesson. The particulars of the situation aren't helpful or important, but the gist is this. I found out that a group of people were leveling some pretty hurtful and untrue criticism of me specifically, and it was all happening behind my back. And my gut reaction, which I think is really human, is to want to defend myself. I wanted to clear up what was untrue or unfair. Maybe I even at times wanted to level a little criticism of my own right back, right? And my gut reaction was to want to defend myself over and over again. But then eventually that fight back instinct wore off because I realized it really wasn't doing much to change anything. And then I found myself just wanting to avoid people altogether. I didn't want to go anywhere because if I didn't have to interact with people, then I didn't have to experience the disappointment or the discomfort of their judgment. But no matter how hard I wanted to lean into those fight and flight responses, what I found over and over again in the songs that randomly played on my Spotify feed or the conversations I had with friends and family out of nowhere or just the stirrings of His Spirit in me was that Jesus kept inviting me to practice kingdom love in that situation. And it wasn't always super fun, and it definitely wasn't comfortable. But still, I keep practicing. So when my gut reaction is that I want to start compiling a list of my own grievances against people who are pointing fingers at me, kingdom love invites me to pray for them instead. And what I'm noticing as I practice praying for people who persecute me is that those lists of grievances and my grip on them begins to release as I learn to see them through God's eyes. And I learn to trust His freedom and His provision for me over trying to make things right on my own. And when I want to just hole up at home and avoid everyone, kingdom love reminds me that Jesus' loving presence, it goes with me everywhere I go. He is always with me, and He's always at work. So maybe it's okay to actually go to the grocery store and interact with humanity instead of placing another Walmart delivery order. And I don't get this right all the time, guys. Maybe I don't even get it right the majority of the time. But that's what practicing is all about. We talk about our faith being a practice-based faith. And it is my deep hope that I spend the rest of my time on earth practicing loving radically, maybe even especially, the people who have hurt me or people that I care about. So when we practice communion, when I come to that communion table, it's a reminder for me that I get to live in the freedom of God's love. He has given that to me in a way that is irrevocable, no matter what anyone else does or says. Nobody can take that from me. It's also an opportunity to recommit myself to living the way Jesus has always been inviting us to live, in ways that extend love and freedom, not just to the people that are comfortable to be around, but the people that are difficult to love. So as we prepare to practice communion together today, and I want to go ahead and invite VIP to come and get those elements ready, I wonder if for you there's not already a situation coming to mind where God may be inviting you to practice a little kingdom-style Aikido. Is there maybe somebody that you're already thinking of that you're holding a record of wrongs against when God has already nailed that record to the cross? Maybe, if we get real honest, the person that you're holding the record of wrongs against is you. And you just keep beating yourself up over the things you've done in the past, and that is keeping you from fully experiencing the joy of a close, loving covenant relationship with God. Well, while you come to get the elements here in a moment, I want to invite you to just spend some time reflecting and ask God to show you where you need to lean into today's good news and act as if it's true, to really believe that God's self-sacrificial love on the cross, it defeated sin and death forever. And you're able to live in that freedom and extend that kind of freedom and love to other people. So I'm going to invite you guys to go ahead and start coming and grabbing the elements. I want you to hold on to those, though, as you make your way back to your seats. I'm going to wait until everybody has a chance to get the elements, and then I'll come back up and I'll lead us through practicing communion together, okay? You guys can come. Luke's account of that first communion practice says that Jesus started by giving thanks. So let's do that ourselves. Father, thank you for your love, a love that went to such extremes, that held nothing back, that would stop at nothing to secure that covenant and secure that close, loving relationship between you and your people forever. Thank you for the ways that your goodness still manifests in everyday life. Thank you for the opportunity to commit ourselves to learning from Jesus how to live and love like he does, to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us, to practice radical self-sacrificial love. And as we take these elements, I pray that we would hold both things in our hands, both the reminders of all your goodness revealed throughout our life, and also that commitment to living and loving like you do with the rest of our life. In your name, amen. It says, after taking the bread and giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup after the meal and said, "This cup is the new covenant by my blood, which is poured out for you. Let's take and drink." Guys, I hope today that the time we've spent together helps that practice carry just a little more weight and a little more meaning and connection for you from now on. Before we go today, I just want to remind you that after the gathering, always, we have people hanging out up here who would love to pray for you. If you have something extra going on, you could just use a little extra prayer. Joe and Kevin are going to be hanging out here after the gathering. They'd love to pray with you. Also, a reminder, if you have any nudge at all that you'd like to check out our Go Kids or student ministry teams, any one of us would love to talk to you, or just stop back by there and fill out one of those cards and drop it in the bucket on the way out. Thank you guys so much for making time to focus on God's love for you today in the middle of your weekend. I hope you have a great week. We will see you back here next week. You're dismissed.